I had no idea you'd been hoarding like that. Besides, we're a married couple. There's no reason I shouldn't use our shared assets. That's right. It's worse to hide it. While looking down on me, my husband and mother-in-law kept talking as they pleased. I was so disgusted with them, I decided to confront them with reality. Sigh. By the way, have you checked the name of the passbook? Huh? My name is Lillian, and I'm turning 42 this year. I've been married for 17 years, and before that, I worked at a company. After getting married, I quit my job and started working part-time at a local supermarket. I met my husband, Easton, at work, and at the time, I thought he was an ordinary and kind man. That changed about 6 months after we got married. One day, while preparing dinner, my mother-in-law suddenly visited our house without any notice. My husband hadn't come home from work yet, and I thought there might be some urgent matter, so I let her in. As soon as she saw the living room, she let out a big sigh. Lillian, you've been idly watching TV until this hour. My son Easton is still working hard, sweating at his job. Don't you feel sorry? Yes? I did have the TV on, but until a moment ago, I'd been preparing dinner in the kitchen. You might say I'm lazing around, but I finished my housework by morning, and I've just returned from shopping after my part-time job. Feeling irritated inside, but thinking I've done my part, I replied, I'm sorry, to my mother-in-law. She ostentatiously snorted, went into the kitchen, and started to find fault with dinner too. Oh dear, is this all we have for dinner today? Poor Easton, working so hard. I've planned for curry and salad today. The salad is in the fridge. How could you let Easton eat such a half-baked meal? I wonder what you've learned at home. Insulted not just about me, but also about my parents, I finally lost it and asked a bit harshly, Didn't you need something? Then my mother-in-law opened her eyes wide. Oh my, don't get so mad just because I looked at the dinner. She pouted her lips conspicuously and sat heavily on the sofa to watch TV. What do you need? It's not what do you need. Don't you think you should offer something to your mother-in-law who has kindly visited? Excuse me? You're such an inconsiderate person, not even serving tea. Poor Easton. She kept repeating, poor Easton. So I served her tea, but she complained about everything, including the taste of the tea, saying it was cheap. Back then, I was young and was avoiding arguing with my husband's mother, wondering if I should be considerate to her. However, taking advantage of the fact that neither my husband nor I said anything, my mother-in-law began to frequently visit our home, constantly complaining that I wasn't cleaning properly, that I was always lazy, and that I lacked discipline. After being constantly criticized at every turn, I was truly on my wit's end and decided to consult my husband about his mother. Hey, could you ask your mom to reduce the number of times she comes to our house? Why? Is it that much of a bother when mom comes over? You've seen it, haven't you? No matter how much I work on the house or cooking, your mom keeps complaining about me. Well, that's because mom wants you, Lillian, to work harder so she gets tough. I'm doing my best, but if she comes over without notice, I can't even prepare dinner properly. If you're bothered, say it yourself. But don't forget that mom cares about us too. Throughout, my husband was like this. He never really worried about what I was saying. No matter how much effort I put into cleaning the house or studying cooking, my mother-in-law would nitpick and never praised me. Once the vegetables my mother-in-law brought were clearly close to their expiration date, so I used them for dinner. Then, my mother-in-law sighed conspicuously to serve such withered vegetables to her husband and his mother. I finally realized that she just wanted to bully her daughter-in-law. Being persistently criticized, I consulted my father-in-law. When I told him that it was hard to prepare meals for the mother-in-law and that it was a problem to be visited many times without notice, he seemed not to know she was coming to our house and apologized to me politely. I thought she was going out to dinner with friends. I didn't think she was bothering you, Lillian. I'm sorry. No, it's not something for you to apologize for. She's often out and about, so I've been giving her money for meals. But she hasn't been taking it, has she? Unfortunately, no. I'm really sorry. My father-in-law apologized to me again and again throughout our conversation. He promised to speak sternly to my mother-in-law, and I didn't say anything more about her attitude, thinking that was enough. I thought I could finally relax, but then I received a phone call filled with scoldings from my mother-in-law. Hello? You're really uncouth, tattling to my husband like that? What? I've been going out of my way to check on you, and I didn't expect you to repay my kindness with such ingratitude. That's not true. I'm not repaying kindness with ingratitude. You should be the one apologizing. It's audacious to claim you're inconvenienced. I'm educating you in areas where your upbringing was lacking. You should be grateful. I understand what you're saying, but it is inconvenient when you show up without notice. Should a mother need to make an appointment to visit her own son's house? My parents wouldn't do that. How brazen you are. As a daughter-in-law, you should adapt to the rules of your husband's family. No matter what I said, she got increasingly heated and eventually started yelling so loud that I couldn't understand her, and then she hung up. I suspected she called during my father-in-law's absence, so I hesitated to consult him again, as it seemed like it would only lead to more of the same. Although the frequency diminished slightly, my mother-in-law did not stop visiting our home. My husband was in good spirits as he complained about work to my mother-in-law and received her sympathy, so it didn't look like he'd be persuading her to stop visiting anytime soon. Seeing his attitude, my mother-in-law became even more cheerful, and they both began to blame me. Lillian, you don't show enough respect to Mom. That's right, Easton, tell her more. I'm only getting a small allowance, even though I'm the one earning the money. That's terrible. What a devil of a wife you have. They continued to eat the meals I prepared while complaining about them, and they chatted and laughed in the living room I had cleaned. When I was washing the dishes, my husband would say, "At least prepare the bath," expecting me to get everything ready from the bath towels to his pajamas. My mother-in-law didn't reprimand him for it, but instead sided with him, saying, "Poor thing, having such an inconsiderate wife." I consulted with my father-in-law again and received yet another profuse apology, but I was exhausted with the fact that my mother-in-law's actions remained unchanged. Those were the days that kept on going. One day, I noticed that a necklace handed down to me by my own mother was missing. When I asked my husband, he claimed he didn't know and coldly dismissed me with, "You probably lost it due to your own carelessness. It was supposed to be in my drawer." The truth came out when my mother-in-law visited our home again during dinner time. Mother-in-law, that necklace, oh dear, it's quite disgraceful to desire something someone else is wearing. What my mother-in-law had around her neck was undoubtedly the necklace I lost. It had a unique, unusual design with a peculiar ornament, and there was no way I could mistake it. And there she was, wearing it right in front of me. "Please give it back." How awful. Are you accusing me of stealing from you? It's not only desiring someone else's belongings, but also calling them a criminal that reveals your upbringing. With a triumphant smile, my mother-in-law provoked me until I couldn't hold back and reached for her necklace. Then my mother-in-law purposefully screamed, and just then my husband, who had returned home earlier than usual, opened the front door. Seeing me, he pushed me hard. I crashed into the wall and crouched down on the spot. Looking down at me, my husband, while holding my mother-in-law's shoulder, started accusing me. Just like Mom said, "You've been bullying her while I'm not here, haven't you?" "That's right, Easton. Lillian is really terrible. I just wanted to get along." "No, listen. The necklace your mother is wearing is the one I said I lost. I don't want to hear any excuses. Mom, let's eat out tonight. You better reflect on your actions." Such a sweet boy. Easton really is a good son. With that, my husband left with my mother-in-law. At that moment, the shock of not being able to get my necklace back, along with the anger towards my husband for siding with my mother-in-law without even listening to me, made my pent-up frustrations explode, and I decided to take revenge. That same day, I had yet another talk with my father-in-law. While apologizing to me, my father-in-law listened attentively to my story. And I found out that he was also fed up with my mother-in-law's outrageous behavior. Hearing this, I decided to set up a plan. And then again, when my mother-in-law came to her house without learning her lesson, as usual, she was flaunting the necklace, enjoying my reaction. I deliberately told her, "I forgot to buy something. Could you look after the house for a bit?" Normally, she would have retorted with something like, "How dare you ask me to do something?" But this time, she smiled sweetly and said, "Of course." Why don't you take your time? You're always busy with housework. Thank you. I'll be back in about 30 minutes. With that, I left my mother-in-law at home and went out. Alone in the supermarket parking lot, I held my pounding heart, as if testing the malice of those close to me. If I could get definitive evidence, I could take my revenge. But part of me also hoped that my mother-in-law and husband would reflect on their actions and change. Then, exactly 30 minutes later, I returned home. What I saw when I returned with shopping bags was my mother-in-law in the living room, messily eating dinner with my husband. Oh, you were late, so we started without you. Today's dinner was more plain than usual. Don't you feel sorry for Mom? But I asked mother-in-law to watch the house because I forgot to buy something. No more excuses. Be careful next time. Seeing my husband act even more arrogant because of my mother-in-law's presence, I couldn't help but sigh. Looking at the pot, with only bits of vegetables left, I felt more disgusted than angry at my husband, who didn't even think to leave some food for me. I guess there's no future where these two will reflect on their actions. After cleaning up dinner, I checked what happened to the trap after my mother-in-law left. As expected, it seemed like the trap had been set off. Seeing it, my husband's smirk, mocking me, looked uglier than ever. His triumphant smile was just like my mother-in-law showing off the necklace, and I couldn't help but laugh. And the day of revenge came sooner than I thought. On my husband's day off, he and my mother-in-law called me to the living room. Seeing the two of them in high spirits, I sat across from them, pretending to know nothing. Hey, why didn't you tell us? What are you talking about? About the bank book. If you had that much money, you could have told us. Now you can show filial pity to Mom, too. I don't understand what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. We're talking about your bank book. Oh, I managed to say. Without showing any signs of panic, I must have been a bit suspicious, but the two of them happily started laying out the estimate papers for a single family house on the table. Mom and Dad, you and me, we bought a new 2-family house. Bought? What do you mean? You're slow to catch on, aren't you? We're saying we made a contract with the money from your bank book. Buying it all at once means no interest and it's smoother, right? Hold on. Why are you moving forward with this without me? Lillian, you really do hate me, don't you? That's why you're saying you don't want to live together. Hey, cut it out. You're being rude to Mom. Who's being rude? It's far more disrespectful for you two to use my money without my permission. You're the ones, huh? People with bad upbringing really have bad mouths. I struggled to suppress a laugh at the two of them who were saying whatever they wanted. There was a part of me that was amazed at how terrible I had become, but my resolve to take revenge never wavered because it was these two who had made me this way. We found a perfect newly built property for sale, so we've already signed the contract. No matter what you say, it's too late now. Anyway, I didn't know you were saving up that much. Besides, we're married, so there's no reason for you to complain about using our shared property. That's right, it's worse to hide it. By the way, did you check the name on the bank book? Huh? The two of them froze at my words. Seeing that, I finally couldn't hold back and burst into laughter. The two of them peered at the name on the bank book and then looked at me with faces drained of blood. What the hell is this? It's exactly what you're seeing. Why is it our person's name? I never said it was my bank book. So what does that mean? You stole Dad's bank book? You thief. Who's the thief? You went out of your way to pry open a locked drawer and took it. But you were hiding it so carefully. Oh, so it's okay to steal things that your daughter-in-law treasures? I guess that's how you were raised, mother-in-law. Don't talk back to Mom. You should watch your mouth. Do you know why father-in-law gave this to me? Why, you say? I heard from father-in-law about the reason mother-in-law has been spending so much money lately. You two took a vacation while taking time off from work, didn't you? Well, it seems you told the company whatever you wanted as the reason for taking time off. Like I had a fever or went back to my parents' home. I got a call from the department head and he was speechless when I told him the truth. Huh? Finally realizing their predicament, the two exchanged troubled glances. But I had no intention of forgiving them over something like this. While we were silent, the doorbell conveniently rang. When I went to the entrance and brought the visitor into the living room, the two let out a small scream. When my mother-in-law came to our house, I had contacted my father-in-law. Why are you here? I've told you countless times not to cause trouble for Lillian. But there are no buts. When will you two start behaving properly? Dad, she had your bank book, and so what are you calling her she for? I didn't raise you to be so rude. You're old enough to know better. It's embarrassing to hear you calling mom, all the time. If you can't treasure your wife, what's the point of calling her she? If you say that, she has treasured me too. Are you saying you're not being treasured? I've been working so as not to cause you trouble, and I thought I'd managed to save a decent amount of money. I've tried my best to let you do what you want without any financial constraints. And now what? You want me to overlook your mistreatment of your wife? Well, throughout this exchange, whenever they tried to make an excuse, my father-in-law would fire back tenfold until they were rendered speechless. He delivered the final blow to the two, who were shrinking and hanging their heads about the bank book. By the way, about the bank book I left with Lillian, I told her to take it as a nuisance fee because I felt bad about how much trouble you two have been causing no matter how much I warn you. No way. And you two, after stealing that money, even bought a house. What more should I do for you? The two couldn't say anything, and mother-in-law ended up being taken home by my father-in-law. Before that, I pointed at her neck and was able to recover the necklace safely. Seeing that, my husband guessed what had happened and forced his mother to bow her head. In the now quiet living room, I handed the divorce papers to my husband, who was completely deflated. Why? What do you mean, why? After all this, you still think we can stay married? But you're only mad at Mom. Of course I'm disgusted with you too. No, I won't divorce. Then shall we go to court? We'd have to expose everything you've done to the court. And your company, though. Huh? Oh yes, we've got it all on camera. You two breaking open the lock and taking the bank book clearly shows you two desperately breaking the lock. No, you're lying. It's amazing how you can call others thieves after doing such a thing. I wonder what kind of upbringing you had. Why? All of that will be made public, and you'll probably have to cover the $300K you used of your father-in-law's money, my compensation, and the court fees. What are you going to do? Why can you say such cruel things? You still don't get it. Should we have your father lecture you again? I accepted the divorce papers from my dejected husband and finally became a free woman. As for the $300K I received from my father-in-law, I decided to accept it again as a nuisance and consolation fee for my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. The two of them, under my father-in-law's supervision, had to work their fingers to the bone to repay him a total of 60 million yen. Once, I received an email from my ex-husband to a free email address seeming to ask for a reconciliation, but I ignored and deleted it. Thanks to being free from my source of stress, my health has improved, and I'm spending my time freely with the money I received from my father-in-law.
Stop acting so high and mighty.
After being called out on her work behavior, the boss's daughter started giving me a hard time the next day.
Your presence is really getting on my nerves. Get a clue, old woman.
Day after day of harassment wore me down, and her words led me to decide to retire early. However, things took a turn when our boss returned from an overseas trip. What the hell is going on? Why isn't she here? His words left his daughter dumbfounded. My name is Alice Ives. I've been working as an office worker at a local company since I graduated high school, and I've been there for 40 years now. A few colleagues who joined the company the same year I did left after getting married or switched to other jobs. Before I knew it, I was the oldest employee at the company. During that time, the company changed hands, and now David Turner, the son of our former CEO, is running the show. As the longest-serving employee, I often found myself fielding questions from other employees. Hey Alice, can you look over these documents for our meeting with a client? Or personal problems like,
I had a fight with my husband last night. I know I'm the one at fault, but I just can't bring myself to apologize. What should I do?
I've always enjoyed listening to people's stories, so I guess I was an easy person to talk to. There were many times when people thanked me for lending an ear, saying it really helped them clear their heads, and at some point I started being called the workplace mom. It's a little embarrassing, but it feels good to be relied upon. I had absolutely adored the homely atmosphere of our company and had resolved to dedicate myself to it until retirement. However, a dramatic change occurred in this harmonious workplace. During the months that our CEO was on an overseas trip, his daughter, Megan Turner, joined the company. After completing her training at one of our branches, she transferred to the head office administration department. At first, everyone was welcoming, and I was excited too, but it didn't take long for people to become fed up with her behavior. Megan severely lacked manners and common sense as a grown adult. She flaunted her status as the boss's daughter and didn't bother to do her job right. She was transferred here with the title of Assistant Section Chief, which she apparently forced upon the executives. No matter how much she's the boss's daughter, I felt disappointed in the executives who bowed to the demands of a second-year employee, but I couldn't voice such things. I wondered if the boss knew about this. It's hard to believe that our sincere boss would condone such behavior. Or maybe he just allowed her to do as she pleased because of his paternal affection. In any case, Megan caused considerable confusion with her selfish actions. Her behavior started to delay our work and affect our schedules, and the dissatisfaction among other employees kept piling up. Most of the consultations I received were about Megan.
Megan, she's just awful. She complains about our work, saying it's sloppy and half-hearted, but she doesn't do anything herself.
And you know what? She was actually preparing a document for a client the other day. It was so unusual that I looked over her shoulder, and it was full of mistakes. I couldn't let it be submitted like that, so I secretly corrected it for her. Well, that's how it went. The executives couldn't even scold her properly because she was the boss's daughter, and they were no help at all. The atmosphere in the company started to turn sour, and I feared that this could lead to a serious problem. Despite our concerns, Megan's reckless behavior did not change.
Miss Ives, I think I might quit this job.
Some people even started saying things like that. I knew something had to be done. The boss wouldn't be back for a while, and I couldn't wait that long. I figured I had to be the one to confront her since the executives were too timid. An opportunity soon came up. Megan was fiddling with her smartphone during work hours. If she did it sneakily, I could have been somewhat endearing, but she was doing it blatantly. Everyone around her had a look on their face that said, "Do your job." I approached Megan and said, "Miss Turner, it's time for work now. It's not the time to be playing with your phone, is it?" Megan looked surprised and raised her face, making a questioning face.
Look around.
Everyone's working. Don't you think it's strange that you're the only one playing on your phone? She scowled even more.
I'm our CEO's daughter, you know.
You think you can talk to me like that? I sighed inwardly. Knowing that it wouldn't be easy to get through to her, that doesn't matter. For as long as you're being paid by the company, shouldn't you be working? Megan glared at me with a red face, then suddenly slammed her desk and stood up.
You're annoying. Who do you think you are, acting so high and mighty?
The other employees were holding their breath, watching us. I'm just saying what's right. If you think I'm annoying, it's probably because you know you're doing something wrong, isn't it? I didn't know if I managed to sound firm, but at least I said what needed to be said. After all, I'm not suited for giving sermons. Megan glared at me for a while, then said in a strained voice,
"Just remember this. I'll make you regret talking to me like that."
With that, she turned her back and walked out. For a while, everyone was silent, unable to move or speak. Then someone said,
"Miss Ives, that was amazing,"
and the others started to talk.
"Well done, Miss Ives." "Really, it was a refreshing sight."
I just vaguely smiled back in response. I didn't think I said anything wrong, but there was no doubt that I had hurt her. I regretted not considering my words and location a bit more, but a shocking event awaited me that would sweep away this small regret. Megan, who had been humiliated in front of everyone, started to harass me.
"Miss Ives, please finish all this work by today,"
she said, dumping a large amount of work on me. Most of it wasn't urgent, and there was no need to finish it today. It was such a childish retaliation. Other employees offered to help when they couldn't bear to watch, but Megan didn't allow it. The workload was too large for one person to finish, so of course it meant working overtime. Seeing that, Megan spoke with a triumphant look.
"You work slow for someone who talks big, Miss Ives. Make sure you finish everything before you leave, okay?"
And so it continued. I kept myself going somehow, but the immense daily work, overtime, and insults almost broke me. Megan was probably waiting for my spirit to break. Seeing me weaken, she said,
"You're just a nuisance."
"Wake up, Grandma." Seeing her face, I thought, this is it. I can't stay here anymore, in a place where someone hates me so much. I had planned to persevere until retirement, but I now decided to retire early. I submitted my retirement notice, and on my last day, while I was sorting out my things, other employees spoke to me.
"Miss Ives, I'm so sorry we couldn't help."
Everyone looked apologetic. "It's okay, I made this decision myself. Most importantly, keep your spirits up and do your best." As everyone was saying their goodbyes, Megan came in.
"Stop chit-chatting and get back to work, everyone. She's no longer a part of this company."
None of the employees responded and just looked at Megan with cold eyes. Then they said to me, in chorus, "Take care," and walked past Megan. Megan's reputation was already bad, but after forcing me into retirement, her position worsened even further. She didn't seem to realize it and still acted like a queen. Approaching me, Megan smirked. "This is what happens when you go against me. Serves you right." To that, I simply bowed my head and quietly said, "Thank you for everything." I couldn't forget the scornful look Megan gave me at the end, even after I left the company. I am genuinely curious to know how she ended up being like this. With that attitude, she'll only push people away. My family worried about me after I lost my spirit after leaving the company, but my heart was still heavy. One day, while I was aimlessly passing time, I received a call from President Turner. When I answered, wondering what it was about, he immediately started apologizing with tremendous force.
"Miss Ives, I'm so sorry.
I was speechless for a moment because of the suddenness.
My daughter did something terrible to you. I'm really sorry. I can't blame you if you're angry."
It seemed like the president thought I was angry and not speaking. "Sir, please calm down. I'm fine." When I said that, the president's voice on the other end of the call seemed to calm down a little.
"I know it might be too late to ask this, but would you consider coming back to the company? I won't let my daughter do as she pleases anymore."
For the moment, setting aside whether I should return or not, I agreed to make a visit to the company. The next day when I arrived at the company, the employees who spotted me quickly ran over. They filled me in on what had happened. The CEO, having returned from his overseas business trip, had noticed the unusual atmosphere hanging over the office. He wanted to hear from me about it, but I wasn't there. When he heard from the employees about Megan's behavior while he was away, he was furious. "Megan, what is this all about? Why is Miss Ives not here?" Megan, perhaps not expecting to be scolded, snapped back at her father.
"It's that old hag's fault for lecturing me. Everyone else thinks so too. They all disrespect me, the president's daughter, and take me for granted."
The CEO shouted even more at Megan's selfish response. "Enough! Just because you're my daughter doesn't mean you're entitled to behave like this. And what's this about being an assistant section chief? I don't remember assigning you to such a role. How dare you make up your own title?" Stammering in her response, Megan was caught off guard. It seemed the president immediately called me after. After ending the call, the president gathered the employees and apologized in front of everyone for his daughter's misconduct. I was concerned about Megan after hearing everything. "So how is Miss Turner doing now?"
"Her title was revoked. She's now in the CEO's office, having been summoned by him."
I said goodbye to the employee who gave me the information and headed for the president's office. There, Megan was being scolded by the president. When the president noticed me, he came over and deeply bowed his head. "Miss Ives, I'm truly sorry for this incident. Due to my incompetence, I've caused you trouble." "Mr. Turner, please raise your head. It's all right." "No, we need to make things clear." The president urged Megan, who was standing next to him, to apologize as well. Megan looked utterly crestfallen, as if salt had been rubbed in her wounds, muttered, I'm sorry." Not knowing what to say, I remained silent until the president spoke. "I know it's a bit much to ask, Ms. Ives, but could you return to the company? We need your expertise." The CEO was nearly on the verge of tears. Seeing him like that brought back old memories. I first met the president 40 years ago when I had just joined the company. He was still in middle school at the time. Since we were close in age, he found it easy to talk to me. He often came to the company to hang out and frequently sought advice from me about school, friends, future plans. Back then, we used to call each other by our first name. He looked up to me like an older sister, and I regarded him as a younger brother. That relationship remained unchanged as we grew up, and I've been his confidant in many matters since he joined the company. "All right, but please stop apologizing." Unable to flatly reject the president's request, I decided to return to the company. "I'm so relieved. Truly relieved." The CEO was rejoiced at my decision, but Megan, standing next to him, had a complex expression on her face. Well, that's expected. The person she disliked and caused to quit was coming back. Upon my return to the company, I was given the role of an advisor. Everyone welcomed me warmly, with some even tearing up at my return. It was a joyful moment, but there was one thing that bothered me. Of course, it was about Megan. She had been quiet and isolated since being scolded by the CEO. Given her attitude up till now, it was understandable. Despite my hesitation, I decided to talk to her. "Miss Turner, can we talk for a second?" She briefly raised her eyes to meet mine, but then quickly averted her gaze. "I want to talk to you for a bit." Without waiting for her agreement, I began, and she reluctantly got up and followed me. What should I start with? As I thought, Megan spoke up first. "What do you want?" Her voice was visibly sullen, but I was relieved that she at least agreed to talk. "It seems like you're not getting along with others." Without adding unnecessary comments, I simply stated, and Megan looked down in silence.
I don't understand why someone as smart as you would treat everyone around you like that. You knew you were antagonizing them, didn't you? How can you know whether I'm smart or not? Megan retorted, but her voice lacked any spirit. I do know. Your father always bragged about you. Megan looked up surprised. It was true. Mr. Turner adored his daughter very much and was always proud of her. My daughter is beautiful and intelligent. Everyone in the company heard him say that often, and we all knew how much he loved her. Besides, you might not remember, but we've met before. Megan looked even more surprised. This company, now big enough to have branch offices, used to be a small family-run business. I had a good relationship with not just the current CEO, but also his father, the former CEO, and his wife. They were there to celebrate my wedding and childbirth, and when the president got married and Megan was born, I rushed to the hospital to celebrate her birth. We used to be close like family until she entered elementary school. Suddenly, something seemed to strike Megan's memory. Aunt Alice? At the nostalgic address, I found myself smiling involuntarily. That's right. Little Megan was an adorable child who would always cling to Aunt Alice whenever I visited. Do you remember Megan? Megan nodded over and over again. I remember Aunt Alice who used to play with me when I was little, but since I entered elementary school, Aunt Alice stopped coming home. That's right. Around that time your father took over. He became very busy, and I also had children and other things, so I couldn't visit your place anymore. Such nostalgic times. Back then, as our company was expanding, the CEO was incredibly busy. He didn't even have time to return home and often stayed at the company. As we continued to be busy, we became distant without realizing. I was sad when Aunt Alice stopped coming over. Dad was also hardly home. Megan continued, her expression as innocent as it was in the past. I asked Mom when will Aunt Alice come home next, but she told me Aunt Alice is busy now and can't come. Be a good girl and wait patiently. I see. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely. So I behaved well and studied hard. I thought if I did, Aunt Alice would come to see me. Tears started to fall from Megan's eyes. Then, as if regaining the honesty of her childhood, she started to tell me about various things that had happened to her. The time she was scolded at a branch office during her training after joining the company because she couldn't work well. How she had never been scolded before and in her panic had inadvertently used her status as the CEO's daughter, which made things irreparable. Since then, everyone started fearing her and she couldn't be trained right. Now she had a hard time getting a grasp of her job. Without the title of being the CEO's daughter, she would just be a person who couldn't do her job right. She was scared, and this led to a vicious cycle of resorting to using her title again. I stroked Megan's back as she wept while telling her story. I'm sorry, I should have listened to you sooner. I'm sorry it took me this long. Megan lifted her tear-soaked face. Aunt Alice, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a bad girl. No, Megan, you're a good girl. You just made a little mistake. It's okay. We will fix it together from now on. I held sobbing Megan's shoulder and continued to stroke her head for a while. Since that day, Megan had changed astonishingly. She realized that to gain recognition from those around her, she needed to build trust through her strength, not her title. Seeing Megan open up to me, the other employees started to approach her little by little. Seeing this, it seemed that Mr. Turner was relieved. Miss Ives, I can't thank you enough. You've been a tremendous help to both generations of our family. No, to the entire company. Please don't praise me too much. I just want to be of help to the younger generation. Then Mr. Turner jested with a tone reminiscent of his younger days. As expected of our company mother, we look forward to your continued support. I returned a smile to the president. There are only a few years left until my retirement. Until then, in this place, I'll continue to be everyone's mother. I made up my mind once again.